Electric Cafe.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Electric Cafe. If you're new to the channel, my name is Tim Humphrey, and if you've been to my channel before and you've seen some of my videos, welcome back. Today's video is I'm going to review 40 random singles from 1989 and 1990 that are in my collection. Recently, I saw a little bit in the vinyl community, some people sharing some records in these 2 years. And I thought it was fun to sort of do that. My friend Tobias from UK, who's originally from Sweden, who's a good friend, he actually did it on his channel, so it kind of inspired me to want to do it on my channel. So, we're going to do that today. Before I get into sharing 40 random singles from 1989 and 1990, I wanted to touch a little bit on my channel if you're new to it, and a little bit on my experience. So, I've been collecting for a little bit over 40 years. I'm 49 years old. I got into music very early on, as far back as I can remember. I can remember being a toddler, probably 3 years old, and playing records on my sister's turntable, and already having an opinion about music and already choosing which records I like. As far back as I can remember, it's one of the first memories I had. And I really enjoy playing music and sharing it with others. And the goal of this channel is really, I don't have any lofty goals, but I really want to make this channel a diary of my music journey for selfish reasons. I'm not here to, to gain any money out of it, any notoriety, to any expectations of it being a big channel or monetizing my channel or anything like that. If people that watch my videos get something out of it, and we become friends and share music, that's a bonus. That would be a fantastic thing to happen. My second thing I wanted to touch on was my other goal is obviously to share good music and talk about great music. I feel like there's an opportunity, especially with electronic music and all the different styles that are related to electronic music and the subgenres. I feel like there's an opportunity out there to share more of it, because there's so much of it, to share past and present and really track the history of it. And in some ways, I kind of consider myself, although I don't like to talk about myself, but I do like, consider myself an electronic historian, because I'm very interested in history, and history has always been my favorite subject, and my favorite subject has always been music. So that's kind of, part of my DNA. And, my father was a teacher. Most of my best memories growing up and today are really tied around music. One of the other things I'd like to do is obviously score and rate tracks and talk about music. I'm very interested in making lists, whether it be my top tracks of a year or top tracks of the band or favorite industrial albums or favorite freestyle singles. Like, I'm always interested in doing lists and rating and scoring tracks. And I've done that since I was probably as far back as maybe 10 or 11 years old, when I used to make top 40 lists and shows and record them on a cassette and share them with my family members. And that was my top 40. And I was kind of considered myself a DJ from early on, even before I started really actually being a DJ in the late 80s and mixing records and scratching and mixing records in a more of a new style of a DJ form, as far as like electronic DJ. One of the other things I'd like to do is review your suggestions, whether it be Depeche Mode, whether it be Roxy Music, whether it be your own music. I'd be interested in listening to it and reviewing it. If it's an album, if it's a single, I don't monetize my channel, but I do ask for a small donation, so please respect that and understand that everybody's time is valuable, and so I do ask for a donation. And during that time, I generally do an in-depth review, whether it be a song or an album that somebody suggests. So if you see some of my other videos, you understand that it's not something where I just listen to it and say this is cool or this is great. Like, I really try to use my experience and my background and give you some proper feedback. There's so many channels out there that I don't necessarily want to talk negatively about them, but some of the reaction channels are, in my opinion, kind of a joke. So I'd like to not only do a better job of that, but also focus more on electronic music. Growing up, I've always supported physical music and buying physical music. I've never had an MP3 account. I've never had an iTunes account. I've never had an MP3 player. I've never illegally downloaded music. Growing up or when those things were new, I've always been interested in buying music and supporting the artists and everybody's involved with the actual music. I look at things that like their art, and so I want to pay the artist for their art. I think that's very important to do, and I'm glad to see the last handful of years with the vinyl resurgence and Bandcamp and record stores popping up that people are feeling the same and they want to own their music and they want to support the people that they enjoy their music of. I think that's a fantastic thing, and I've always been a supporter of that. So I'm happy to see the general public sort of get that appreciation and understanding and want to support the people that they get so much enjoyment out of. A couple other things I've been involved in. I went to recording school in 1996 in Los Angeles, and I've worked at a lot of post-production facilities and studios through the next 10 years. I was a big member of Discogs.com. If you guys know that site, I've been involved in that site for about 24 years now. I used to be an editor and a moderator back in 2001 to 2004 before the website had a marketplace, and I was a big part of the community there. And a lot of people online may know me from that and maybe have seen my reviews and my work on that site. I probably have over 3,000 to 4,000 reviews on that site, and it seems like I always kind of run into people that have seen my reviews there. I also do reviews for a lot of online retailers, record stores, and publications for the last handful of years. I run 2 record labels. One is called Rediscovery Records, which is a vinyl reissue label focused on 90s electronic music. Then I also have a sub-label called Discovery Records, which is a digital label which shares music from my friends and acquaintances and artists that I've followed for a long time, new and unreleased music, and occasionally, just sharing unreleased or reissues. I've been DJing close to 40 years now. I also have worked at random record stores over the course of the last many years. I've also done front of the house engineering for some small clubs and also lighting. And in my spare time, I buy and sell record collections as well, and also do a lot of promo work and reviews for labels and artists, and working with their back catalog and managing a few artists as well in my spare time. So thanks for letting me take that time to just introduce myself and also talk a little bit about the channel and the goals and my thoughts about having a channel or running a channel. All right, so now we're going to get to showing some random singles from 1989 and 1990. These are 40 random singles from those years. And if you know my collection, I collect CDs, cassettes, and vinyl, so I'm pretty well rounded in my collection. And so there'll be a few in here that'll be probably cassettes or at least CDs, anyways. The first one I wanted to start with was Public Enemy. Welcome to the Terror Dome. Public Enemy were one of my favorite hip-hop artists in 1999. I first got into hip-hop probably around 1985 with Run DMC, of course, Grandmaster Flash, and then also Kool Moe Dee and LL Cool J, of course. And then 86, we had Beastie Boys took the world by storm. Public Enemy took the world by storm in 87. And, of course, growing up in Los Angeles, it was hard to escape NWA by 1987, so Too Short, Above the Law, DJ Quick, and some of the great gangster rap that came out of the late 80s. But Public Enemy were just one of my favorites. Such a kick butt record. If I took this record out and you actually could see the condition of the vinyl, I'm sure it's pretty messed up, because this was one of the records I learned how to scratch on back in 1990. And I can remember scratching for a couple days and sort of learning how to do it, and it really not catching on because, inherently I'm more into electronic music, but also I didn't want to scratch the record. And it was cool to sort of hear a sample, but I figured I could do that on my pause button on my cassette player. So why not do it that way? And because I was already doing that. back in about 1987, I started making my own remixes on cassette. I would take one of my favorite dance songs like Strange Love by Depeche Mode, and I would make remixes of it using the original remixes and making my own extended version of it and making these cassettes and sharing them with other people. I did that religiously from 1987 to about 1992. Pretty much every single I had that was dance related, I was making remix copies and recording them to cassettes. So that scratching was really not much of an interest for me, but you can tell from this record it was my favorite one to scratch with that Flavor Flav sample in here, which was classic. That's such a fantastic record. All right, so another one from 1989. This was Third Base, Step Into the AM. Man, this one crossed over big time to West Coast. There was not a lot of singles that made the impact that this one quite did on the underground. Pete Nice, MC Search, just killed it on this record. Another one that I used to early one that I used to scratch with as well. Third Base, such a fantastic uh, early hip hop group. Of course, they would go on to more fame with Pop Goes the Weasel a couple of years later. That hit was I think it was top 40 hit, but this was kind of their biggest hit and probably what they're most known for on the underground. And such a fantastic track. Another cool hip hop record, Rob Bass and DJ Easy Rock. Back in 1989, they had a lot of solid singles. Of course, It Takes Two was a huge worldwide hit, and also Pain. But this one was their third single, Get on the Dance Floor, which had the Sky King remix. Unfortunately, Sky King, that remixer, she passed away a couple years ago, but fantastic dance record, and the remixes are really cool as well. So just wanted to share this one real quick. Rob Bass and DJ Easy Rock, Get on the Dance Floor. Also, can't forget about this one, DNA featuring Susan Vega, Tom's Diner. This is a great track when it came out, and it crossed over into the into the mainstream as well. DNA was a UK sort of dance band. I know they did some remixes, like they remixed. I think it was "Get the Message" by Electronic, but I also did some other remixes back in the day. But this was their biggest hit with Tom's Diner, Suzanne Vega, of course. Such a great track, every time you hear this, especially the acapella, or you play the 12-inch version, everybody knows it. Da, 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 da. Can't beat that. Growing up in the late '80s, it was almost really hard to escape a lot of the New Jack Swing and a lot of the bands like Bobby Brown and New Edition and some of their hits and Aaron Hall and Keith Sweat and stuff like that. And I liked some New Jack Swing here and there, and this was one I definitely liked. It was a cover song, "Strawberry Letter 23" by the amazing Tevin Campbell, who's an awesome singer. Great mixes on this one. Get 8 remixes on here. That was so cool about maxi singles. 8 mixes on here. Of course, produced by Quincy Jones. "Strawberry Letter 23" by Tevin Campbell. I don't think there was anyone who didn't like this song when it came out. 1990, Delights, Grooves in the Heart. Such an amazing track and such a creative track too, and it was so unique for the time. It sort of blended funk and disco and hip hop and also dance music as well, and also the remixes were great too. But just a fantastic record, and one that still gets everybody on the dance floor today. All right, so moving on to a little bit more dance music and freestyle music. I was a big fan of freestyle music growing up through the '80s. Growing up in Los Angeles, there was a lot of great Latin freestyle music in 1983, 1984, 1985, and then, of course, it was tied with New York house music, or what would become New York house music, and also Miami. Everything from Madonna to Expose to Trenier to, Lisa Stansfield and Taylor Dane, just on and on. So many great artists and great dance music through those years from like 1984 to like 1992. And I kind of grew up through those. It was almost really hard to escape the Latin connection growing up in Los Angeles. Things like Debbie Deb and geez, Johnny O, Fantasy Girl. Just so many great tracks. And that sort of tied and helped kind of spawn house music and techno music through the late 80s and also all the great remixes. And this was a great example. Black Box's Everybody, Everybody. This is a big hit in UK and also in America. Black Box, of course, did Right on Time as well. And so they were on a roll through this time, 1990, 1991. Fantastic music. It's a little bit of a trivia question. I can't think of the name right now, but this track is actually being used right now pretty regularly too, in a advertisement for some kind of medicine. And I can't remember the name of the medicine, but it takes out the words everybody, everybody, and sort of uses the. It's kind of creative, but it's also kind of annoying. And it's really kind of makes you feel old when you start to hear songs that you have or songs that you were when a kid, and they're in strange advertisements, right? And what's stranger than hearing a dance song advertising a some kind of subscription, a prescription or drug or something like that? Just kind of really throws you for a loop. But in some strange ways, it's kind of funny, but it's also I don't know, kind of disrespectful. But great track, everybody, everybody, Black Box. Also, another track that crossed over into hip hop, R&B, New Jack Swing, and also dance music. Soul Souls, Back to Life. Couldn't escape this track, and boy, it caught on so well, and it was so catchy. As soon as you heard that acapella, back to life, back to reality, so good, so good. And the remixes too. Of course, you got to have the acapella as well. Such a great track, and this was great because this was a great example of dance music in 1990, 1989, 1990. How it was really unifying all kinds of cultures, black and white, Latin and Puerto Rican. You know what I mean? Everybody was playing this track. It just crossed over to everybody. You know, that was a great thing and that's the great thing about dance music in general. Also, another one, Technotronic's second single from their album called Get Up. Of course, they had a huge track with Pump Up the Jam. And the great thing about this EP is it has the techno remix on the B side. And this one's kind of a really, really good one. And whenever I play that track as a DJ, I play that version because it's kind of more of a techno mix. And it's unique in some ways because everybody knows the original so well. It's great to play a remix. And of course, Joe Bagart, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, from Belgium, who went on to do some progressive house and ambient music in the later early '90s. He produced this, and this was the follow up single. I believe it was the second single or third single from the album, but I think it was the second one from Technotronic, and just was another big success for them, and still gets people up on the dance floor. From Arista Records, Snaps, The Power, 1990. Such a huge track this was. And it was so powerful, too. This was a great version of it was a little bit more edgy. There was really nothing like this at the time. And it was really because it was more, in my opinion, it was a little bit darker and a little bit more edgy. The great vocal on it and the rap on it. Such a slamming track for 1990. 1990 is probably one of the best dance songs of 1990. Snaps, The Power. Also, another great one from 1990. Kathy Dennis's Touch Me All Night Long. Such a great track. So catchy, too. She had a couple hits in the UK, but this is probably her biggest hit, at least biggest hit in America. And, she's kind of considered a one-hit wonder, but she did have, I believe, two other top 40 or top 20 songs in the UK. But this was kind of her big hit here in America, and just goes over so well, when you play it. Such a probably one of the best freestyle kind of crossovers in the pop music. And this was kind of the blend of like Euro house and Euro pop and freestyle music and just really good dance music. From 1989, Sheena Easton's One on One. Great thing about this track is the extended remix. That's what it's all about. David Morales. Whenever you've seen his name, as the remixer back in the day, or you saw a Red Zone mix, you knew David Morales, you knew he was going to come with a great house version, a techno version of your favorite dance tracks. There's probably no other remixer in the late 80s and early 90s that had as many great remixes as Dave Morales did. Just an amazing, amazing remixer. And funny enough, when I was checking, there's actually, I think, 3 or 4 times he's actually featured on tracks that I'm mentioning. He was just everywhere back in those days, and everybody was asking for him to remix tracks, and rightly so because he did a great job. And I'm not a huge Sheena Easton fan, but the remix is slamming. Great late '80s house and techno. Also from 1989, Tom Tom Club, Sub Oceana. Of course, Tom Tom Club was Tina Weymouth, who came from Talking Heads, and they had a couple albums with as Tom Tom Club, and this was the main single from I believe their second album in 1988, 89, and Sub Oceana remixes from Juan Atkins, I believe, as well. Just such a great track. I don't know if anybody out there has seen this video for this track, but kind of floating like a jellyfish in the water. Just such an unusual and cool track. And it's such a spooky and melodic track, and it's so unique for the time. I mean, if you like Talking Heads and you don't have Tom Tom Club's records, definitely look them up and get them because they're the crossover especially for me. Like Talking Heads was great. Tom Tom Club was equally great because they were a little bit more funky and a little bit more geared towards dance music. Of course, with Genius of Love and Sub Oceana was another favorite of mine, and you got some great remixes on here. Also from 1990, Army of Lovers, Ride the Bullet. This was kind of their breakthrough club hit. Of course, they had Neutron Bomb in 1988, I believe, but this was one of their big early hits. And if you guys don't know Army Lovers, they did a lot of Euro pop and a lot of Euro house, but the remixes are a lot of fun and a lot of great melodies, a lot of good dance music, and they blend sort of house music and a little bit of techno into a little bit of synth pop and maybe even disco music and high energy music, and such a unique band and great sound. And this is one of their big hits, Ride the Bullet. Also another big hit for 1989, 10 Cities, That's the Way Love Is. This is a great dance track, back in 1989. In 1989, I was just starting to hear some house music and techno, and they were starting to get some play to major labels like Atlanta and Arista and Jive Records, and some of the bigger labels were starting to support some great house music. And this one, Marshall Jefferson on here, Steve Silk Hurley's on here, Tim Regisford on here as well. Just a couple classic, veteran, legendary names, all on one track. 10 Cities, That's the Way Love Is. I mentioned Jive Records just a little bit ago. This was one that came out on their record label, Lisa M's Rock to the Beat from 1989. Such a great sample, used a lot in some rave tracks. This was kind of my introduction to I would guess, sort of my summer of love in a way. House and techno music, verging on, a little bit of acid house in here and verging on rave music. This was kind of part of the genesis for me, and in sort of hearing those sounds kind of evolve out of different style house and techno. But this one sort of had some acid house in here, and it was verging on a little bit more of what would become rave music in 1990 and 1991. And this one sort of put those styles on the map for me. Such a important track for the history of me with dance music as the 90s would go on. Lisa M's Rock to the Beat. All right, so we're changing pace here a little bit and going to some alternative music. Jane's Addiction, Been Caught Stealing. So back in, this came out in 1990. This isn't the original version. I didn't have the original version on cassette single at the time when it came out. This is a 12-inch remix that came out in like 2017, but I still wanted to share it because it's originally from 1990. And of course, it has a picture here of the video. Such an awesome video at the time. And Jane's Addiction, with Nothing Shocking a couple years ago. And, growing up in Los Angeles in 1986, 87, 88, me and my friends were big skateboarders, and we used to, all come to my house, and we all have skateboard thrash sessions. And Jane's Addiction was one of our favorites to skateboard to and do our all night skateboard sessions to. Other bands like Red Hot Chili Peppers, Fishbone, 24 Spy, to Beastie Boys, to Run DMC. Those are just a handful of some of the artists that we used to listen to. GBH, and there's also some punk music in there as well. Christian Death, and those are some of the bands that in the middle '80s we used to listen to when we used to skateboard. And so, whenever I think of like bands like Jane's Addiction or Red Hot Chili Peppers, it always reminds me of the middle '80s when I first started skateboarding. So back to 1989 with Real Life's "Send Me an Angel," the re-release in 1989 with the new versions, and it originally came out in 1984, and then this remix really helped catapult it again to sort of a cult status and one hit wonder. When I play a lot of DJ sets or DJ nights for like 80s music, there's a handful of tracks that are just classics that you almost play every time, and like "When in Rome," "The Promise." Another one is "Real Life Send Me an Angel." Just everybody seems to enjoy this track, and it always goes over well when you play it at any kind of 80s night. And it's always cool to play this particular version because it's a little bit different than everybody knows, but great record from 1989. From 1990, Information Society's "Think." Some great remixes on here. This was the first single from their second album. Of course, they were coming off some huge success with tracks called "Running" and, of course, "Pure Energy" in 1989 and 1988 and 1989. And this was probably their best single from their second album, and I really enjoy the remixes as well. I used to have this on cassette single as well, or cassette maxi single, but just a really underrated track in their career, in my opinion, and definitely, for me, they're probably their last good song. From Network Records, 1989's MC 900 Foot Jesus with DJ Zero, "The Truth Is Out of Style." This was such a unique track when it came out, and really this kind of set the tone for what would be his follow-up album, "Welcome to My Dream," which got a lot of cult status, and I reviewed it on my channel in the past, and actually just recently, probably like a month ago. And MC 900 Foot Jesus was so unique, such a interesting rapper and an interesting style, and a lot of fun and a lot of creativity. And definitely brings back a lot of memories. Of course, David Ogilvy from Network Records did the artwork in his unique style and immediately recognizable style when you know his artwork. He also did Skinny Puppy's artwork and Move and Manufacture and all the great records from Network Records from the 80s through the 90s. And that's MC 900 Foot Jesus, "Truth Is Out of Style." All right, moving on to a little bit of shoegaze. We got Cocteau Twins with "Ice Blink Luck" from 1990. And this was, I believe, the second single after "Heaven in Las Vegas" off their 1990 "Heaven in Las Vegas" album. I'm such a huge Cocteau Twins fan. I've reviewed a couple of their on my channel, and I eventually going to review all their albums. But this is actually from their box set, their amazing box set that came out in 1991. But this was originally from 1990, and so I wanted to share this one just because I love Cocteau Twins music so much. All right, so the next one is Sisters of Mercy, "More." This was the lead single from their third album called "Vision Thing." Such a huge track, and it included the 8.5 minute version, extended version, and just a great video, and probably should have been a bigger hit, in my opinion. Sisters of Mercy, for me, are just an iconic band, and probably the example of goth rock to many people, although they have some industrial in there as well. But just their sound seems to just get better and better with age. And this was one of the most powerful songs they did as far as a pop appeal. Like, there's a lot of other Sisters of Mercy songs I like better, but when this came out, it was definitely like, wow, this could be a big hit. This could be kind of the turning point for the band. And unfortunately, it didn't quite get there. for various reasons. But this original Digipack and still is a great song, regardless. And yeah, Sisters of Mercy, just one of my favorite goth rock bands of all time. One of the biggest new bands to jump on the scene in 1989 and release music was Nine Inch Nails. And this was their best maxi single, most bang for the buck, too. You get 10 tracks on here on a maxi single was just unheard of and probably still a record today. That I think this is close to like 65 minutes or so just on one maxi single was a great value. And here you got probably what most people consider are probably the best three songs from Pretty Hate Machine: Terrible Lie, Head Like a Hole, and also Down in It. Although I love Sin, and there's a couple other ones as well. But this could be, for maybe most people, the best three songs on the album. But just you get some great creative remixes on here and sort of extended versions. And they all are really tied to the original version, but just kind of veer off and are mostly extended versions. So if you like the original, they're not too way out or too different. They're just more of the same goodness, and that's always a good thing. But such a great maxi single, and really was kind of a groundbreaking song for the year. Even if I am a big Skinny Puppy fan, even at the time, and still like dig it more than Down in It. I still respect this album a whole hell of a lot. And Nine Inch Nails for a couple of years there were definitely one of the best industrial bands in the scene. So back in 1989, one of my first concerts was seeing New Order in Irvine at the Irvine Meadows Amphitheater in 1989. It was June. And I guess I just finished seventh grade. And Sugar Cubes and PIL opened up for New Order. And to me, PIL was the highlight of the night. They had a really strong set, and I loved their energy, John Lydon's energy on stage, and just their powerful blend of punk and alternative and also a little bit new wave. Like PIL really resonated with me because they added a keyboard and a little bit more of an electronic sound. And no other song captured that better than 1989's The Warrior. Love this track. Love the video as well. And the remix is on here. Francis Kevorkian, one of my favorite remixers of all time. Probably most well known for remixing Pet Shop Boys, but also producing Violator by Depeche Mode as well. But a great DJ and great remixer in his own right. Also produced by Stephen Hogg, who also did everybody from New Order to all kinds of artists. But just one of my favorite PIL tracks. Like they had so many good tracks, in the middle '80s for me. This Is Not a Love Song, Fat Chance Hotel, Angry, Rules and Regulations, The Body, The Warrior, Acid Drops. Just really loved the period of 1983, 82 through about 1992 of PIL. Just very unique, and I'm looking forward to them reissuing those records because I do have a couple of them, but I do need a copy of one of them. I can't remember which one it is, but I do need a reissue of 1992. I never got that one on vinyl original. But yeah, it'd be nice to see PIL reissue some of their middle to late 80s and early 90s records. But yeah, The Warrior, such a great track. And really cool remixes. Here's Nights of Rebs, 1989 single for Hearts and Minds. Of course, this is the promo version. Hearts and Minds is my favorite all-time track from Nights of Reb. Such an awesome track, such a great groove. This has a couple remixes on it as well. Of course, again, this is the promo version. Sadly, we lost Douglas McCarthy, who passed away a couple weeks ago. If you look on my channel, you'll see a couple videos dedicated to Nights of Reb and also Douglas McCarthy. Rest in peace, but such a great track and one of my favorites from 1989, Hearts and Minds. From 1989, Lush's Sear. I know many people think this is like a mini album because it has 6 songs, but I kind of consider it a maxi single as well. I kind of just wanted to throw in Lush just to be honest with you. I know it's a mini album, but excuse me for bending the rules a little bit. Love Lush, love some shoegaze. They just blended indie rock and shoegaze so well, and I love their material. This is Sears by Lush. One of my favorite EBM bands of all time. Front 242 and their 1989 release Never Stop, which has some great B-sides. Agony Until Death is a really good one. And also the remix of Never Stop is the version 1.1 is my favorite song here, as long with the original version. But man, Front 242, just one of the best EBM bands of all time. Hard to argue that they aren't. I would say Night's Reb is a close second. But just a fantastic EP and just another. They were just on a roll in the middle to late '80s, early '90s. Just an awesome band. And back during that time, I also got the postcard for it. And it's always cool finding memorabilia like this back in the day and sort of including it, with the original record. I always like to do that so I can kind of keep them together. But yeah, Front 242's Never Stop from 1989. Such an awesome record. Also another one from Network Records. This is Manufacturers, TerrorVision 2. Manufacturers did a couple albums in the late 80s and a few singles. And I think they had 3 or 4 singles. But this is one that is probably my favorite, TerrorVision 2. This is a great Manufacturer, a great blend of sort of new beat coming from Belgium, coming from Europe, and kind of blending it with industrial, music. And sort of, it was like the perfect blend of those two styles. If you're a fan of like Wax Trax records, and you don't know Manufacturers, they'll fit in perfectly with your KMFDM, your Meat Beat Manifesto, your Ministry, etc. Manufacturer fits right in with what was going on at the time. One of my favorite industrial bands of all time is Cabaret Voltaire, and Richard Kirk and Steve Mallender. And towards the later '80s, because this one, Easy Life, came out in 1989, they were really kind of moving into a acid house and also techno and house music, and kind of moving from industrial into those styles. And that was such an exciting time. And some of their best work are some of the solo music by Stephen Mallender and Richard Kirk under other names that they did from like 1989 to 1994, roughly, maybe even 96, with like Sandoz and Electronic Eye, who Richard Kirk recorded under. But this was kind of the genesis of that, and that period of them kind of moving into more of a acid house and techno and house direction. And so it's definitely one of my favorite Cabaret Voltaire's singles from their late '80s, Easy Life. So obviously I'm a big Skinny Puppy fan. You can see it from my shirt. So I had to include at least one single from the band in this video. And the one I chose for this video is Tormentor, which came out in 1990. And I really like this single because the Nature's Revenge dub version is really good as well. And I love the artwork because it's tied to the Too Dark Park artwork, which is my favorite Skinny Puppy album, I think, although I'm in the middle of rating them. But I also have the 12-inch versions. This one's the Canadian version, also the American version. The Canadian version was on blue vinyl. But just a fantastic artwork, and loved this single and also the B-side. Such great Skinny Puppy tracks. Tormentor, just such a great track to hear live. And I was really excited that they played this on their final tour when I got a chance to see them in 2023. Such an awesome track, Tormentor. Also, I wanted to include my first R&S record, which was Mental Overdrive, 1200 AD, the track was called. This came out in 1990 by an artist named Per Martinson. And if you guys don't know R&S Records, they are famous for their Ferrari logo as well. That's kind of iconic symbol for their label. And R&S started like in roughly like 1983, and they were super important for the history of new beat music and also techno and some rave music and trance as well, and still going on today. But R&S Records is such an important label for the history of electronic music, and this was my first 12-inch from RNS Records, 1990, Mental Overdrives, track 1200 AD. Really some cool techno and also a little bit of electro on here. I haven't touched on this artist too much, but it's definitely in some ways kind of a love-hate relationship, and that's Moby. I was a big fan of his early 90s music. This is one of his first ones, is Mobility. Such an awesome track, and it has the original version of Go on the other side. But this track really is one of his earliest and most moodiest tracks. It's kind of like a little bit more of like an ambient, kind of slower techno track. Really cool. Still probably one of my favorite Moby tracks of all time, Mobility. All right, now we're moving into a little bit of synth pop with 1990s Pet Shop Boys, So Hard, their first single from their 1990 album, Behavior. And of course, David Morales does a couple remixes on here, does an excellent job remixing So Hard, and then also the great B-side of It Must Be Obvious. But also, the CD version has a version of Pananero, which is a track from their first disco record, which is kind of an underground hit for them and kind of a cult song for the band in some ways. A lot of people who grew up through Pet Shop Boys and their first couple albums, like I did, loved the track Panero. In fact, it's probably the best song from their first disco record. It was the only track that was new, I believe, besides All Night, though At Night, I think was the first track, which was kind of a sort of a remix, but it was an original track. But most people, I think, like disco because of Panero, and of course it has remixes from tracks from Please, but this is a great version of Panero if you haven't heard this version on the CD single only. I also have the vinyl version, but I didn't want to necessarily pull it. I do have it hanging framed in my record room. Such an iconic track, and back in 1990, I dressed like Chris Lowe. I was such a big fan of Pet Shop Boys, and I was part of their fan club back in those days, and I had pants and a hat and wore the Champion beanies and big jeans and boots and stuff. I tried to dress just like Chris Lowe. I was so inspired by Pet Shop Boys musically, and also I liked their style as well. So naturally, I had to choose a single from 1990 and 1990 from my favorite band. And I thought I'd choose a little bit of a different one that most people might think or choose, and that's Pictures of You. Of course, with Love Song and Lullaby and Fascination Street, you had a great remix extended version of the single and some really good B-sides as well. I've always been a big fan of Cure B-sides, especially through this period. But reason why I wanted to highlight this EP was because of the live versions on the other side. Some really great live versions from Wembley Stadium. Last Dance, Fascination Street, Disintegration, and Prayers for Rain. Really good recorded songs, and really, besides probably their Orange Show, that DVD and that live video, which is probably my all-time favorite live concert of all time, visually and sound-wise, the way it's filmed and everything, and the crowd, and the whole experience is fantastic. I love that DVD. In fact, I have the PAL DVD as well that I converted to regular NTSC a long time ago, many years ago, before a lot of the DVDs can play PAL DVDs because it's an overseas DVD. But these versions are really great because they capture the band during this album, which is an iconic album, but also it's at Wembley Stadium. And the particular versions of Fascination Street and Last Dance sound great. Some of the versions they were doing at that time of the band, this sounds the best, and I really like how the guitar sounds on Fascination Street, and the bass line especially and Last Dance, because that's one of my favorite upbeat songs of the Cure's period, and of this album is Fascination Street. Just love that track, and if you ever get a chance and you haven't heard, check out the Wembley versions of those tracks, and they came on Pictures of You. So when Kick came out by NXS in 1987, they were arguably the biggest rock band on the planet, probably along with like U2 because of their Joshua Tree album. And so there was big anticipation for their follow-up album. And when X came out in 1990, the first single was Suicide Blonde. And this maxi single included a few remixes, and one that people don't maybe know about, or because a lot of times you don't think of NXS as maybe some good remixes. You don't necessarily think of that. It doesn't always come to mind. But this particular one had a really good remix on it, and it's very clever because it takes Suicide Blonde, which is kind of an upbeat track, especially with the horn sample and everything like that, and the milk mix really smooths the track out, and it becomes a little bit more of a melodic track, even a little bit more down tempo and a little bit more techno. It has a really cool beat, just a great alternate version of a classic NXS track. And if you like Suicide Blonde, or you want a little bit of more of a mellow version that includes Michael Hutchinson, who was a great singer, great vocalist for the band, excuse me, on a track, check out the milk mix of Suicide Blonde by NXS. So growing up in the early 80s, I was a big Soft Cell fan, and continued to follow Mark Allman through the rest of the 80s and early 90s. And one of my favorite singles by him was the 1990s, The Desperate Hours. Really great track. Love this version as well. There's also the 12-inch vocal remix and also the dub version and the alternate dub version. So you get 4 remixes on here. But just a great song in general, and one of my favorite singles by Mark Allman. One of my favorite maxi singles from 1990 was Blue Savannah by Erasure. In the maxi single, it had a couple really cool versions of Blue Savannah, but also it had a couple of really cool B-sides as well. One was No GDM, which was, I believe, produced by Zeus B. Held, and it was a cover song of one of his early produced tracks from the early 80s. And another one was, which later became a single that year, a limited single, was Supernature. This, of course, was a cover version of Cerrone's disco record, and they just did a fantastic job of it. William Orbit remixed it, and it came on this sort of like a letter record cover. This kind of came in it. And this was a B-side on the original Blue Savannah. And if you followed Erasure's career, there was a disco cover song they did on almost every album, and or sort of a B-side on some of their singles. They're here and there they would do a disco cover song, and really the success of Supernature and just how well Andy Bell's voice and Erasure fit for disco music. That's kind of what led to the ABBA album and the success with that. And in many respects, Erasure is just as much a high-energy disco act as they are a synth pop band in many respects. And this was probably, for me, probably their best cover song of all time. And William Orbit just did a fantastic remix on here. Also Mark Saunders and Gareth Jones as well. But just a great B-side and remix of a disco track by Cerrone. One of my favorite singles from 1990 was Electronic's Getting Away With It. Of course, Electronic was Johnny Marr from the Smiths and Bernard Sumner from New Order, but this also on lead vocals featured Neil Tennant from Pet Shop Boys. And this was like the super group of synth pop in the late 80s and the early 90s. Of course, I saw them do this song in 1990 when they opened up for Depeche Mode at Dodger Stadium. And the remixes on here are great. And then you got a great B-side in Lucky Bag. The B-sides of Electronic and their singles are just fantastic. If you like the period of like 1989, like I have Technique up there, or if you like Electronic's debut album, do not miss out on getting the singles of Electronic. There's some great B-sides on there like Free at Will, Second to None. On here has Lucky Bag, and also has a Miami Edit version of it. Such a really, really cool track. And there's another B-side I'll mention because I'm going to highlight a New Order track next that has a similar sounding B-side to Lucky Bag in Best in Marsh. Not to spoil the one I'm going to talk about, but I'm also had it on record. And for those that have been collecting for a long time, like I have, this is thought I'd mention this since it's out here. This is the original, the first frames. God, these things were an accident waiting to happen. Like these things were, if you guys remember, these things would sort of swivel if you guys frame records. These things were so sharp. And then also the original ones of these, you can see it's broken here. These were original glass. These weren't the plastic ones that they came out later. And in fact, these are metal. They're not plastic edges. And these things were like a really sharp cut metal. Just these things were like so dangerous. Like, I can't tell you how many times I would take out a record, and, cut my finger or almost, it's just, or just break them because these things would shatter so easily. But thought I'd pull this one off a wall because it's been framed for about 25, 30 years now. One of my favorite singles of all time, Electronics Getting Away With It. So next up is New Order's Round and Round, which was the second single from their 1989 album called Technique. There's a lot of great remixes on here from like Kevin Saunderson, for example, and a lot of great 12-inch versions on here. And the B-side is particularly worth mentioning, called Best in Marsh. One of my favorite B-sides for New Order. And New Order had a lot of great B-sides when you think of like 1962 or Mesh or Procession. A lot of great B-sides. This is one of my favorite. If you like the period of Technique or Electronics debut, gotta check out Best in Marsh. It's such a great instrumental, just a little bit over 3.5 minutes. There's actually two versions of it. There was one on the cassette single, and then a slightly different version on the vinyl version. They're very close, but they are a little bit differently. Both are great. And if you like 808 beat machines or that period of New Order, you're just going to love this track. And probably the most well-known single from this album. And especially for the video, which had a bunch of supermodels at the time on it. But such a great track, Round and Round, just a great chorus. And I also have a second copy and also the European versions with those remixes. A lot of great remixes on here. Kevin Saunderson from KMS Records. And just one of my favorite tracks to remix back in the day. I can't tell you how many versions I made of this from all these from remixes myself and creating my own remixes. All right, so I'm not sure if you're counting, but we're down to our last three. And my last three picks are all from the same band, the amazing Depeche Mode. Such an amazing year. I can't think of any band that had a more impactful year on my music history than the period of late 1989 when Personal Jesus came out all the way through World in My Eyes at the end of 1990. The singles Policy of Truth, Enjoy the Silence, World in My Eyes, and Personal Jesus. Just some amazing maxi singles with some amazing remixes and terrific B-sides. And so I wanted to show a little bit of those with me today. So starting out with, of course, I have these on single as well. These are, there's three versions. I got 3 copies of World in My Eyes. The oil tank remix on here, it's just worth it for that remix alone. But also you have the Mode to Joy remix and also the Dub in My Eyes version. But also, if you ever got the cassette version, I have the CD single of this as well. But it also had another remix of Sea of Sin and also another remix of Happiest Girl, which was the Orbital. I think it was a Floating Orbital remix, I think it was called. But the Sea of Sin remix was the sensory remix on the record, and then the tonal mix on the cassette single, and I believe the CD single. But just amazing track. World of My Eyes, one of my favorite Depeche Mode tracks. Of course, you have this came with the box set. This is also the World of My Eyes promotional one, the Pulsating Orbital mix. That's what it's called. This one had the Mayhem mode mix as well, which was unique to this copy. Um, Also have this version, which is great as well. It came in the Depeche Mode box set. Showing off a little bit of my vinyl on this one. Um, I actually have 4 copies of the American version. One signed, you know. So I have a lot of Policy of Truth. I also have one on maxi single on cassette and CD. Here's the European version, which I really like the color art on this one as well. But Policy of Truth, man, the Capital mix, the Beatbot mix. You also had the Transcendental mix and the Pavlov dub. Fantastic. The K-Lid remix was basically the track they used for the opening when they came out during the Violator tour. That was the track that was they played for about 2 to 3 minutes. Was kind of their intro. So that's the B-side to Policy of Truth. But I just love the remixes of Policy of Truth. Also, of course, you had the amazing 20-minute version of the quad final mix of Enjoy the Silence. Just fantastic. Of course, you had the ecstatic dub and also the Hands and Feet remix. And there was also the baseline version as well. The B-sides on here were kind of interesting with Mephisto, and also I think it was Sibling was the other B-side. Not featured on this version because it had all the dance remixes on here, but I know it came on the CD version, which I have as well. Here's another copy. And then also you have the European version. The Tick Tick remix is the other one. And the Harmonium one was the original one where I believe is the original version of it that Martin Gore created with the track, and then Alan Wilder put a beat to it, and that's the Enjoy the Silence that most people know. But originally it started out as the Harmonium remix, which a lot of people don't know about. But yeah, I have this one has the 7-inch version. It also has Sibling and the ecstatic dub, so it was almost like a 2-part. I have a lot of different versions of this, and then of course this version, which has the quad mix on it as well. So just has all the versions on here. So of course I have those on CD and vinyl as well, and also cassette singles. I was a big collector of Depeche Mode and have most of the versions of singles, including I think for like Walking My Shoes I have the most because I have like the CD3, I have the CD5, I have the maxi single, the fold out single, the record, the reissue, the cassette single, the cassette maxi single. So I just collected so much of Depeche Mode over the years, and I have if there's probably any band that I have the most physical items of is probably Depeche Mode. All right, so that concludes my video looking back at 40 random records, singles from 1989 and 1990. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're interested in seeing more videos by me, definitely check in the playlists. I categorize my playlist by genres, so if you're interested in a certain genre related to electronic music, certainly check the playlist and you'll see a lot of album and song reviews in there as we go, and some ones I've done in the past. So yeah, I appreciate your support and watching the channel. I very much appreciate your time, and thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.